And this is actually kind of a historical animation. I'm giving you 14 different pictures. If we look at them, these are what they look like. I say this is historical because this is actually the first animation that was ever created. Does anybody know the backstory behind it?
He took pictures of the horse and people were like amazed that his feet were.
They didn't think it was real.
Exactly, bingo.
They didn't think it was real because they'd never seen a horse with all its feet open.
Exactly. It was actually a bet somebody made. Somebody bet someone that said, I don't think the horse's feet come all the way off the ground when it's in full gallop. And so a guy set up a series of cameras and proved that it does come off the ground. And in doing so, when you play them all together, it makes an animation. So let's set this up as a GIF animation. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to just drag number 1 into Photoshop and make a Photoshop document. So this is what it'll come up with. We're not going to worry with size. We're not going to worry with resolution or anything like that. This will be the first one. Notice in my layers, obviously it'll come up as my background layer that I've created with. Next thing I want to do is to load every other image on top of this one. So here's number 2. I'm just going to drag 2 into there. And we'll have to hit return. Here's 3. Hit return. 4. 5. I'll make sure I get this right. 6. Count it off in Japanese. And 14. Okay. Check out my layers that I have now. Got it all set up to be in layer format. Of course, each one is turned on, so it's covering up the last one that we have. Now let's actually set up my timeline. In our timeline, whenever you open it up, you're greeted with one of 2 choices. If I click my down arrow, you can make a video timeline, we'll get into that later, or you can make a frame animation. That's what we want. It's the frame animation for this one. From here, here's our different controls for actually creating the different animation. Create a new frame. Oh, excuse me. Actually, I need to click on Create Frame Animation. There we go. Here's our different controls. There's our timeline setup. When I get more, I can play it. Here's where I can create a new frame. So here's frame 1, and it's going to look like this one. Which layer is it showing?
14.
Layer 14. Okay. Go down here. Here's frame 2. Frame 2 is set up. Which layer is it showing?
14.
Which layer should it show? 13. So I'm going to turn off visibility for that one. There's 13. Go down here, make a new frame. Go back up here, turn off 13 so I can see 12. Pretty cool? Very simple stuff. All I'm doing is playing around with making new frames and turning them off. I won't zoom in and out. And you should have number of frames each. Do, 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 do. Oop, actually need to turn on that one. And then finally, we get down to here. So I should have 14 frames, one for every layer that I have. Do y'all see me mess up any? Hopefully not. Let's see if I messed up.
Does it, when you're clicking new frame, is that creating the new frame, and then when you adjust the layer, you're getting ready to adjust the next frame? Or when you adjust the layers, is that adjusting the frame you just made?
You make the frame first, then set up your layers. That's the easiest way to explain it.
Is it going to go backwards because you started with 14 instead of 1?
Hold on a second. Well, let's look and see. Let's look and see. Good question. Good. I know exactly what you're thinking. Okay. Okay. So let's play it and see if it looks like it's playing backwards. It's like it's going forward. Here's what I did. I gave them to you backwards so that when you place them on here, it'll go forward. Okay. I thought about that. Actually, if you look down here at the very bottom, you'll see the number for each one. Even if I go into my JPEGs. Come on. Hang on a second. So frame 1 is actually 16, and then, that'll be next. 15, 14, 13, 12,
So
11,
you
10,
gave
9.
them to us.
I gave them to you backwards.
R1 is the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're actually going to go from forward to back as you set them up. Because remember, see, if I turned on frame 14, the quote first frame is technically the first frame. There are 2 is what the first one I had to work with. So if I click on frame 1, you can see, or whatever frame, it's going to turn on or off the visibility over here and play it from here. Pretty cool. The second thing is to set the duration. Now if I press play, it's only going to play through once and stop. Press play again, stop. If I wanted it to loop continuously, here's where this comes in. Right now it's set to once. I can tell it how many times I want it to loop. So by default, here's 3 times. So if I played it, there's 1, 2, 3, and stop. Or I can tell it to loop forever, and it will continuously display those over and over again. Pretty cool. Final thing, here's the last thing. Below each frame, you can tell it how long you want that frame to stay on the screen. Usually by default, it's 0 seconds. As soon as it comes up, it comes to the next one. As soon as it comes up, there's the next one. Sometimes that's a little bit quick. If I wanted it to say stop on frame 3 for 1 second, let's play through that and see what it looks like. I'll go back to frame 1. We'll hit play, stop, and go. Stop, and go. Stop, and go. That'll come in handy for our next one. If I wanted to select multiple frames, let's say I clicked on 1, hold down shift, select all of them. If I was to change one of them, in this case we're going to change it to like 1/10 of a second. They all change to 1/10 of a second as well. Let's do the same for both of those. Usually giving it like 1/10 of a second will make it run a little more smoother, although it will look slower on screen from there. Final thing, let's save this as a GIF. Go up to File. To save an animated GIF, go to Save for Web. And one of the presets over here, you get different types. You can save JPEGs, PNGs. There's your GIF to work from. Since it is an animated GIF, if I look at the very bottom, I've got my little play controls so I can actually preview it to see what it looks like. Notice how slow it's going. The final product won't be that slow. It's just kind of giving you a low quality preview to work with. Final thing to consider, GIFs can save different kinds of colors, so you need to control how many colors that you have. The most colors is 256, that's kind of the most your eye can see. You can have it set for fewer colors. If I set it down to 2, what 2 colors do you think it's going to convert to? Black and white. See what it looks like. And there's not too much in between there, so yeah, I'm not going to see that. Let's set it to 4 colors. Notice it's going in binary. Hey, it's sort of there. In this case, it's the 4 most common. 8, 16, it's giving me a little more contrast. Keep your colors as high as possible. That'll give you the most to save as. When I hit save, I'm just going to call it horse GIF to the desktop. Final thing, all I want to do is save the images. Photoshop can do some mock-ups and save HTML. No. Just images is all we want from here. Hit save, and there it is on my desktop. Cool. Let's see y'all do it. We'll work through this first exercise together. So I've added on all of the images for this one. Notice each one is in its own particular layer as well. In my timeline, we're going to set up a frame animation. And so this will be my starting frame that I start with. I do want to go ahead and set up the number of seconds. So we'll give it a 1 second delay, and we're going to let this loop forever. So here's image 1. I want it to transition to image 2. So I'm going to make a new frame. and I need to turn off visibility for layer 1. Okay? If I was to play this, what would it look like?
Just both of them going
Back and forth, side by side.
It's perfect.
Perfect, yes. Close up shop, y'all can go home. Not exactly what I want, because it's jumping from one to the other. What I would like for it to do, that's getting a headache, is for it to slowly drop opacity from one down to the other. Okay? Nope. I'm going to make it easy on how to do that. So I'm going to go back to frame 2. Let's turn on this one. Instead, what I want it to do is to drop 100% opacity of this one. Still does the same thing, and if I played it, it's doing the same. But notice what's different. This one's still visible, right? What I need it to do is to show a transition in between frame 1 and 2. This is the style of animation called a tween animation because it's in between 1 and 2. So if I select both of them, hold down Shift, that's where this comes in handy. If I click on it, it'll give me a couple of options that I can do. Notice that I'm doing this section, or between the selection that I have, so in this case these 2 frames, how many frames I want to add, and how many layers I want to work with. In this case, I'm just going to keep it all layers. Notice that what I can animate, a position, where it's at, its opacity, and its effects.
I missed where you got tween from.
Okay, I'll cancel it out. This button right here, here's your tween. And that'll open up this from here. What did I change? What parameter did I change? Opacity. So I'm not going to really worry about the rest of those. It's changing that. Number of frames tells me how much time it needs to elapse between these 2. For this one, we're going to keep it at 5 frames. And we'll say OK. Now check out what I got. 5 frames from there to there. So if I was to play this now, it looks like that. Pretty cool?
Are each of those 5 editable now?
I mean, it's still the same frame. So here's frame 2, 3,
Okay.
4, and if I look at my layer, there's the opacity dropping down. There's 50%. There's frame 6. There's 33%. Computer's doing all the work as far as changing.
Did you just create the second frame and drop the opacity to 0 just to
Bingo.
show us? Or is that
Nope. That's actually what you're going to do. Let's do it again for the next one. So from frame 7, which layer am I looking at?
I need to look at
2. Okay, so I want to transition from 2 to 3. So I'm going to make a new frame. So I want to go from here to see layer 3, right? How do I want to see it? What do I need to do? Do I need to turn it off? Lower the opacity. I'm setting up frame 3. Lower opacity on that one. So now between those 2, let's see if we can look at both of them. There to there. Nope, one's still at 0% opacity, so it won't matter.
That's right.
There to there. If I select both of them, set up our tween, and we're going to keep everything the same, just the opacity, just 5. Now it will go from here to here to here to here. Transition from there. Pretty cool? Y'all tell me what I need to do for the next one. Create a new frame first. Always make a new frame first. Okay? So I'm in 14. Which one do I need to
Change it to 3 and drop the opacity.
drop the opacity?
Select 13
Select those 2
and then 2.
and then tween between those 2. Come on. We'll say OK to that, and then that's set up as well. Eventually, you'll reach all the way back down to the background layer, and to make it transition back, you'll just go back up to 1 and bring the opacity back up to 100%.
Can you play it?
Yeah, okay, I'll tell you what. Let's pretend this was the last one, and I'll transition. If I played it now, this is what it would look like. There, to there, to there, jump. There, to there, to there, jumps back. What I want it to do is I want it to transition back to number 1, right? So let's make a new frame. And let's say this would be our last one. I'm going to go back up to layer 1, our first one, bring up the opacity. And then tween between those two.
Can you make it like, instead of going so fast, can you make it like linger on the ones with the words?
Oh, you're getting ahead of me. I like the way you think. If I played it now, you can see there it is. It goes back to 1 and it looks seamless. I like the way you think. So let's go back. I want it to linger on 1. How do I make this one stay longer?
Just
Change the time. Let's say let's stop on there for 2 seconds. Change, 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 change. There it is at 100%. Linger for 2 seconds. Change, 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 change. Oop, too far. Linger there for 2 seconds. If I played it now, let's go back to the front. 1, 2, change. 1, whoop, ah.
You did point two.
I did point 2. I'm sorry. Thank you for catching that. Point 2. 2 seconds. There we go. Did I do the same? I did the same thing over here. All right, here we go. 1, 2, change. 1, 2, change. 1, 2, change. So on and so forth. I couldn't keep going on with that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool? That's what you're going to be doing for the second one. If you follow the instructions step by step, that will work out through this. It's a little bit more difficult. So for this one, I've got a little puzzle for you guys to solve. You'll probably see me solve it just in creating this video. You're going to be moving the individual pieces into the area to fill up the square. Simple, simple puzzle. In our layers, notice everything has its own layer. That's the essence of doing this kind of animation. Everything needs to be on its own separate individual layer stacked on top of each other. Use my move tool. To move these around, I'm going to turn on auto select and I'm going to turn on my transform since we're going to be moving these around. Moving into place, rotating. Let's go back down to our timeline. We've been using a frame animation. For this one, we're going to create a video timeline. Choose that, and this is what this looks like. Now the video timeline is a little bit different. In this case, we have to know how many seconds each thing will be on the screen. And that's kind of what it's showing here. Notice that in the timeline, everything that has a layer also has its own timeline layer, except for the background. Cool, so I've got green, red, yellow, blue, and all the pieces that are on here as well. As far as the duration, this is the little playhead, so I can move that and see when things happen. What's the 1021, 1022? What does that mean? Time. What is the 10 and 20F? Frames. It's the number of frames per second that I have. I think it's set up to 32 frames per second, so that's how many that we have. So if I was to press play, here's our little playhead. It's just going to loop through, and right now it's set up to be on there for 5 seconds. Nothing's moving, nothing's going on, but it's going to reach 5 and then go back and loop over again. If I wanted to shorten the time, so right now everything's on there for 5 seconds, I can move my mouse to the end of it, and when I click and drag, notice that it gives me an endpoint and a duration, how long it's staying on there. So if I wanted this to be on there just for, say, 1 second, or right there, 1.2, we'll let's say right there. So there's that. If I pull it back, watch the green one disappear once it goes past that. Gone. Why is it gone? Because it's no longer active on the timeline. And I can move this around. So if I wanted it to start right at 1 second, play, appears, stays for that long, disappears. Cool? Okay, so there's that. That's just turning on and off. So as long as it's there, it will actually play and work. For this one, we're going to set up our puzzle animation. I want to set the length of each layer to 2 seconds. So this one will be on for right there, right at 2 seconds. Same way for each one of these. You can select all of them, but I can't move all of them at the same time. I thought I could. They will snap to be the same for each one. 2 seconds for the whole thing. Excuse me. Here's the next thing we want it to do. I want it to actually move around as it's moving. So let's do green first. Under green, if I click the little down arrow, I've got these different things. Hey, where was the last time we saw position, opacity, and style or effect? On the tween. You can animate the position, opacity, and style of something that's on here. Here's where what's called keyframes come in handy. I'm going to turn on, say, the position of it. Click here. I get a little icon indicating a starting point. If I was to move my position now, it's just going to keep the starting point for this. If I move my time, let's say it goes to 1 second, and I move it again, check out what I got here again. It's locating or it's tracking where it moves from this point in time to this point in time. If I move my position again, theta 2, and then I move this, I get a new, it's called a keyframe from here. Let's play it, bring this back and play it. Press play, and you can see how it's moving around between each of the 2 points. If I needed to change that, let's say I don't want it to go up here, I would actually select my keyframe. I'd like to put my timer over it, move it somewhere else, and then it'll move to that point, to the other point as well. Pretty cool, as long as I'm moving my playhead. Here's the thing to remember for this one. Just as you have to make a new frame, then change it, make a new keyframe first. Move your playhead to where you want it to be, and then change it up as well. There, to there, to there, there, to there, to there, in different points. If I do want to erase it, I can select the point and hit delete, and it will just delete it away.
Did it speed up because they have farther to go, that shorter amount of time?
Exactly, bingo. So if it's going to move, you know, if I put it in 1 second, it's going to take 1 second to get from there to there. If I move it in half a second, and I move it back down here, so now if I played it, you can see how the first one was twice as fast as the other one. It's moving slow, fast. Make sense? Does that answer your question? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, cool. That's the position that we're doing. Let's delete that away. Here's the next thing. I don't just want to move this around. What else do I need to do with it?
Rotate it.
Need to rotate it. Okay, I'm gonna do this the wrong way the first time. Set it up, turn on my position. Oh, come on, there we go. Question?
Understand the opacity
Yeah?
and I understand the position.
Yeah.
What about the style?
The style would be if you've added a layer effect to it. So this would be like if you added a drop shadow or if you added a bevel or an emboss. You can animate how those would show up as well. Not going to get into that. We're going to keep it simple. Okay, so position. Let's say I wanted to start here and I wanted it to move and rotate right there. Well, let's go back to the start. What's it only moving? It didn't rotate. It's not showing my rotation. Okay, so here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to convert this layer to a smart object. Those are those different kind of layers that act a little different. Here's what we're going to do. Control click, convert to smart object. Got my little icon. Now check out what I've got down here. Open up my green. What's changed? Transform. I don't just have the position, now I can do the transformation of it. And this includes scaling. So if I have my starting point, let's say we're going to start it down here, and I want it to move, I'll tell you what, we'll even rotate it. Oh, didn't want that. Start off right there. In 2 seconds, it's going to be moved up here, and rotated, right there. Now let's press play. Now it's actually rotating into place. So for this one, Do this for each of the different areas. For my red one, open up the red. Hey, I've got position. How do I change that to transform? Make it a smart object. Select your red layer. Smart object. Set your playhead to the starting point. Actually, I'm going to open it up. Click on transform. There's my starting point. Move it to the stopping point. In this case, the red needs to be rotated up to here. Whoops. Make sure you don't skew it. From there. So if I played it, both of them are coming into a landing. Make sense? Do the same thing for the blue and the yellow one as well. Make them transform and rotate into position.
To pick which one is on top of the other, would you change layers?
Change the layers,
or-
layer stacking order.
So the stack of them at the bottom in the timeline doesn't really matter?
Nope, not at all. No. Your timeline stack will reflect your layer stack.
Okay, James has a question.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yep. So if you wanted it to go one at a time, yeah. Fine. So. The green moves, then the red moves. Well.
Which time do we have? Do I do export render?
Okay. Y'all look on the overhead. One last thing as far as saving these as well. Sorry, I missed on that part. For saving these videos, now we saved a GIF as and save for web. Saving a video is a little bit different. If you go to File, we don't want to save it, we want to export it. And in this case, we actually want to render it as a video format. Here's the options that come up for this one. There's several different formats that are kind of commonplace. First of all, of course, you can give it a name, you can choose what folder it's in. The format is either DPX, H.264, or QuickTime. As far as DPX goes, I've never used it. Does anybody know what that is or what that's used for? Okay, we'll move on from that. H.2.4, have you ever heard of an MP4 video? That's what that is. MP4 that's the codecs, the format that you would choose. QuickTime is a .mov. Have you seen the .mov type video? QuickTime is MOV style of videos. Regardless one that you have, whatever you have, you can change the quality of it, and there are some presets, high, medium, or low, if you're going to save it to different tabloid or tablets or things. And also, you can set the frame rate. Right now, mine's set up for 30 frames per second. For saving these, I just want you to choose the MP4 format, and we're going to save it as a low quality so you can upload this to Moodle. It will take a couple of minutes for everything to render.
I missed the beginning of this. Do you save it or do you
Yeah.
export?
If you save it as a Photoshop file. To get the video export.
Each action is in the movie.
It's a whole new line.
Okay.
Let's see. If everybody's reached a good stopping point, let me show you the maze because I know a few people are starting on it and want to make sure. The maze is a little bit simpler. Y'all look on the overhead. Says Mr. Ivy, it's simpler. You're doing the same thing. Let's see, turn on, I've been recording the whole time. You turn on, in your timeline, create a new timeline. Notice I've got two different things. One for, in this case, the ball has a layer and the maze has a layer by itself. I want this whole thing to last 14 seconds, okay? So in the very bottom of the playhead, I need to click and drag this out until it reaches 14 seconds. Hey, if it's too long to see, down here at the very bottom, you can actually scale it down so you can compress everything and be able to drag a little bit more. So there's 10, 12, oh, come on, 14. And do the same for the maze layer as well. For this one, all you're going to do is animate moving the ball from each position through the entire labyrinth. To help you out, I've given you where the keyframes should be at each second. So in this case, put your playhead, I got it at the beginning. Layer 2 is my ball. I'm only changing the position, so we're not going to convert it to a smart object. Just turn on position. Okay? So what frame does it need to be at? It needs to be at 1. I'm going to turn off my controls. So move your playhead to 1 second, and then move the ball to 1. Check out what I got. Where should the next one be? 3 seconds. Move your playhead to 3, and then move the ball. Then to 5. Then move the ball. And it's keeping track of where you're moving everything. If I wanted to go back and replay, you can see now it's actually moving in a linear fashion from there. That's all you got to do for that. Simple, simple. Should have done that one first.
No, this one's harder than
Harder? Okay.
I'm confused.
Okay.
Like, I just did exactly what you said. It comes from up there.
Okay, down there. Okay. All right, so we're going to stop. Let's erase away your keyframes. Let's start off and say that. Just delete it. That one, just delete it.
Used to be a problem. Oh, you just cut through. Cheater. That's breaking the wall, Aaron. That's breaking the fourth wall. That's breaking the fourth wall, Aaron. I didn't mean to.
Screwed up there.
I did.
It's okay. Tell you what.
It should go on the tutorial.
That little black line.
Yeah, it's,
I was moving that like
that's
fell first.
it was under transform.
Oh. So it wasn't my fault totally. Yeah, it still was.
Let's see, it is pushing 2 o'clock. If you guys want to try on your own the final exercise, you're welcome to do that. I won't go over it in class today. Instead, if you do finish up, get with your groups or be in contact with your groups about how you want to work through the project or look at websites, do research for this particular project. We'll do this exercise on Monday next week. The final exercise Monday. And there you go.
This doesn't sound like happiness.
No?
This is why I would never be an animator. This is horrible.
I don't want to work for Disney. I want to draw.
I never said that.
Uh-huh.
Oh my god.